everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics
and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Guigar, editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I am Dave Kellett on the other coast, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. Oh, and man, I got to tell you, Dave, I wanted to bring this up. Did you see the Discord server yet?
I have not seen the Discord server, although I'm
check that out.
I am
Patreon. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I set one up for my Drive Patreon folks, and it's fun to see how the tiers and the information from Patreon ports over to the Discord servers. So I know already the functionality. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. And the conversation started immediately among our Patreon backers. It started right up, and there's already
that's fantastic.
Some really, really good stuff going on over there.
That's exactly what we wanted it to be. So that's fantastic.
So if you're a Patreon backer, by all means, use part of your reward for backing this podcast. Get over to Discord, and it's a great place to share ideas, get some advice from other peers. Do a little networking over there. It's going to be really great.
That's fantastic.
So Dave,
and as a go ahead. Yes, Bradley. Yes,
you're buying a house, right?
Oh, geez. Yes. So, you remember?
Listen, I know everything about you. I follow both you and your wife on Facebook. I've got all the deets.
So what's amazing about that, like when someone follows both you and your spouse on social media and you don't necessarily share something and your spouse does, and a friend comes up to you and like, hey, I'm sorry about the tummy troubles you've had the last couple of days. And you're like, wait, what? How did you, what's going on? Have you been looking at my window? Oh, so yes. So remember last week how I had all these grand plans of time management and I was going to tackle 2018? Yeah. Well, it's all going out the window because we're apparently buying a house. So
you have a magnetic placard for this one. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, God. Brad, I need magnetic placards for repainting every room in my house. That's what I need to do. Oh, God. So
that part grinds me. I got to tell you, I think I scared Scott. Scott Kurtz came over to visit when he was in town for PAX Unplugged, and we're sitting out on my front stoop, and we're talking, and he says, do you think you're ever going to move? And I said, no, I have every intention of dying here. And
wow, really?
Yeah, really. Well, there's a whole lot of reasons that go into that that are practical reasons and stuff like that. But the impractical reason is, in no way could I ever bring myself to paint and perfect a house that I'm then going to move out of.
Oh, I know.
It
feels like it feels like you're getting ready for a date that you're going to take my wife out on, like
yes. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to get this house perfect and then I'm going to move.
Yeah. It's like those stories, and it's always tragic when you see it. But the guy who's in incredible shape and he's out jogging and he drops dead right then. It's like, what a waste of being in shape, Oh God! So it's like you get your house all ready and then you have to walk away from it. It's like the best it's ever looked. And then,
exactly.
Yeah.
So now here's my question, because I know I've been to your place at least once. For some reason, I'm picturing two different studios. So maybe I've been there twice, but I know that you've got beautiful studio space. How important was studio space when you were looking at possibly buying a new house?
That is a great question. So when I bought this house, it did not have studio space. So what I did was, in a very Los Angeles way, I converted the garage back behind my house into my studio. And you've probably seen it. It has really lovely.
Yes.
It has lovely vaulted kind of, it's a high pitch garage ceiling. So, redid the electrical, redid the heating and air in here, put in a little mini kitchenette, put in a little bathroom, my brother and I put in some, skylights, and, it was really nice. We made a really special place out of it. And that was because when the move into this house, not only were we building the studio, we were finishing the editing on Stripped, and I had just had a baby.
Yeah.
And so my survival technique that year in terms of time management was to get really fat. So that's what I did. I went out and got really fat that year because I was so stressed with 3 huge projects.
Just ate all your feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Had you asked me at any given time of day, I would have been like, why, yes, I will have some In-N-Out, Bradley. Thank you so much. That sounds delightful.
They know your voice in the drive-thru.
1 a.m. Hello, David. How are you? Oh, it's been a year, everybody. Oh, Susan.
Yeah, no kidding. By the way, happy Thanksgiving. Man, so
that move was a little too big. So anyway, so this house, to answer your question, this house, because I'm not doing strip and there's not 4 or 5 people working in my house, this new studio will be smaller and will actually be in the house. But I think that'll be okay? Question mark? I'm not sure.
You're like me. I mean, as soon as I got this place, the first thing I did was put up all the original art and stuff that I've accumulated through the years, and comic book covers that I got framed that I really liked, because my wife was like, that stuff is not going up in the house. And it's like I finally had a place to put all this stuff, and you've got a really impressive collection of original art. Do you take a look at studio and go, nah, that's not enough wall space for a studio?
Well, yeah, you know what? I hadn't. Oh, thanks, Brad. I hadn't thought about that. Wait,
hold on. Do you need to go call your realtor?
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate this.
Well, listen, I've got the solution. And listen, who's here to help you like friends? This guy right here. You take all that original art, you ship it right over here. I still got blank walls I can fill.
Well, the people that come to my studio always laugh because there's all this great original art all over the place, but I kind of ran out of wall space out in the general room. So over the crapper, I have an original 1770 Hogarth, and people are like, "Is that a Hogarth over your toilet? Why did you put a Hogarth over your toilet?" I was like, "I ran out of wall space." No, it sits over the shitter, so that's where the Hogarth is.
And that's the sound that you make when you've had too much to drink and you end up in front of the toilet. Hogarth.
Hogarth. So anyway, so yes, now that you've brought this up so kindly, I'm not going to have enough wall space for all my art. So look for Dave Kellett's eBay in about 3 months, everybody. That's going to be...
Well, then I don't want to go any further, because I was going to ask what other things went into deciding, is this a good studio? Like having a bathroom nearby. I'm so impressed that you put a bathroom into that garage. I installed a dishwasher, and my wife, to listen to me, my wife would have thought that I moved the moon, 3 centimeters over. I can't imagine doing that kind of plumbing.
Well, okay, so to be fair, I did a percentile of the construction work on the studio, and my brother did the other 99.99%.
It's good to have brothers like that.
Yeah, I swung a hammer and hit myself in the crotch half the time. So when it comes to installing a window or rewiring or doing any of that, it's like, I'm going to call my brother. I'll let him do it. So anyway, but yeah, so as far as deciding studio space, part of it is for the last couple of years, I've had a couple wonderful assistants, but it's both unfair to them and unfair to the rest of the family to ask them to use the same restrooms that my family is using, or to so if you're going to have someone into your space, you have to just be cognizant of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we put in a little bathroom, and at the time there were, I guess at the most there were 4 people here working on Stripped, the comics documentary, and so we put in a mini little kitchenette so that people could microwave or keep things in a fridge, or make some soup or whatever it was, and it worked out great.
That's awesome. Well, okay, I'm looking forward to hearing the stories as you move forward. It'll be exciting. Sounds like it's a neat place.
Yeah, and this is the magnet board is going to get a workout because all those magnets are going to get pushed and pushed further back. So that's life. That's part of being a professional and working, is that there's going to be a sickness, there's going to be a move, there's going to be a death, and you just got to roll with it.
Yeah. There's that's the button right there to last week's show, is that there's not a magnet for everything. There's going to be stuff that comes up that you just don't got a magnet for.
Yeah, exactly. And just in general, so go the plans of mice and men, like you can make the grandest of plans and then life is like, well, no, how about you lose all 4 tires on your car? How about that?
That actually happened.
Really?
I took the car in and he's like, oh yeah, none of these tires are good. It's like all 4 of them. Oh yeah. Well, we drove our butts off this year.
The way I imagined that story was you like backing out of a bank with one of those things that's like, do not back up. That's what I thought you were about to say.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't put it past me. So,
you know what I love about those things is that no matter how intelligent you are, when you're staring down one of those, I always have to do the 5-second pause and think, okay, my tires are going this way. If I roll, I'm okay to drive.
And then you always it's never real slow, and your tire, you always rock backwards because of physics. And it's like really the smart thing to do is to go a little fast over those things. But I always go slow, and then my tires rock back right up against those points, and it's like, geez.
Oh God, oh boy. So we had promised people this week we were going to talk about the greatest of philosophical questions for the people that do what we do, which is Bradley J. Montgomery Houston Geiger. Why are you a cartoonist?
That is such it's an existential question that I've been really kind of rolling over in my mind for ever since you brought it up. And if I go back. Well, listen, I always liked doing cartooning. I always, like from the time I was super little, I liked drawing, and I liked drawing funny little drawings. But I think the real turning point for me actually was in drama. This would have been in junior high school, and we had written a play. Or I had written a play. It was for some, talent show or something like that. And it lampooned all of the teachers. And it was a Star Trek parody. So it was all of the principal was
Brad Guigar, future dater. This is great.
Yeah, well, that's what it amounted to. It was like, here's Captain Kirk. He's the principal. And all the teachers were different roles on the bridge, and I very lightheartedly made fun of the teachers, and it got a huge response. And I realized that there was no way I was going to do that again. Get all those people and relying on actors and hope that somebody could deliver a line right. And I then funneled that creativity and all that, yearning to be accepted and noticed and stuff like that into comics, because I realized I could do the same thing with comics. So I started doing that big time. And then at the same time that was flowering, I was very interested in politics. And editorial cartooning was a huge passion. So at the same time I'm developing that, I'm doing these editorial political cartoons and expressing what I thought was very, very, pithy political thoughts through cartoons. And the whole thing just kind of blossomed, it just, and I noticed that I wasn't going to get attention by hitting the home run. I wasn't going to get noticed.
I want to hug 12-year-old Brad.
Oh, well, listen, 12-year-old Brad had problems. My dad was a small town sports hero. He was really great in his high school. And he was a coach throughout the years, and a very winning coach. And I could not hit the ball for nothing. And then when I was very young, I was learning how to pitch, and I took a line shot to the choppers right after my adult teeth had come in, and it shattered my front tooth. And after that, pitchers found out very quickly against me that all they had to do was throw just the daintiest of curveballs, and I was diving out of the batter's box because that was a tremendous. I spent hours in the dentist chair as they picked that the fractured pieces of that tooth out, and oh man, but yeah, I was never going to be a sports hero for sure, and this was a way that I got attention, you know. And it was a way that I could be special, and I could really flex the muscles I did have, which were writing clever and drawing fairly well, and that's how it all started.
Yeah, and the interesting counterpoint, and it's worth saying, is that we've all met artists that are like, well, I couldn't do anything else. I have to be a cartoonist. I have to be an artist. And I can say to you as a friend that's a falsehood. I know that if I dropped you into 6 situations right now, especially knowing that you have kids to feed and a mortgage to pay, that you could rock out 5 or 6 different jobs. I know it. You could be a TV writer. You could be an essayist. You could be a journalist. You could be a graphic designer. I know from what your skill set that you could do all those things. So it's not that you have to be a cartoonist, but don't you find that cartooning is like this wonderful marriage of like 5 or 6 or 7 different hats that you found in your youth that you love to wear?
Well, and that's why, not only that, and this is something we need to pick up in a future show, but webcomics specifically fed that need that I have to do a little bit of everything. So not only was cartooning that way, where you had a whole bunch of different things that came together to make that a comic, but in webcomics, then you were self-publishing and you had to be a little bit of a webmaster and you had to learn a little bit of marketing, and you went to comic conventions and learned a little salesmanship and all of that.
Yes.
The whole from left to right, the entire landscape of business fascinated me. And I love
absolutely.
that. And the whole, I mean, I get really excited when I teach my class in entrepreneurship. I do an entire day where I do nothing but talk about setting a price on an item. And it's my favorite lecture. It got tons of math in it, scares them to death. But I can talk about that for 3 hours solid.
I know. You know, I've talked at great length with our mutual acquaintance and friend David Malky of Wondermark about how there is a joy in cartooning, specifically as a web cartoonist, in that your creative bug, because after a couple of years, certain aspects of cartooning become rote, right? Not deathly rote or repetitive, but just like you've got it down, I guess is a better way of saying, like you've mastered certain things about cartooning. So it's legitimately fun as a web cartoonist when you can go, you know what? I've never made anything out of die-cast metal. I'm going to make this thing out of die-cast metal. Oh, you know what? I've never made a magnet before. I wonder what the design elements of that are. Okay, I'm going to make a magnet. Oh, I've never done a book before. And so over the course of these last 10 or 15 years, you and I have made bumper stickers, t-shirts, magnets, die-cast things, plush toys, this or that. And like all of that is such a fun thing to be able to say on your deathbed that you did. There's a great joy that it's all tied up in your own work too. So you're right. That's an intrinsic part of why webcomics feed my soul, is that aspect of merch, which to someone like Watterson was the antithesis of what he wanted to do as a cartoonist. But for you and I, it's a straight through line to why we cartoon, which is our ideas are taking form in the world, and that's fantastic to me.
We're making it happen directly. I'm not relying on somebody to put my book together and to get that book out there, and I'm not hoping that they're going to put a lot of energy into it. That's all me. I control all of that.
Right.
And to that degree, I'm a bit of a control freak. You know, I like having complete control over that.
Absolutely. The reason why I react to that is like if you were to ask me the question of, Dave, why are you a cartoonist? It's everything you just said. It's like there's a part of me that's an actor, there's a part of me that's a writer, there's a part of me that's an illustrator. It's this wonderful marriage of all those three things. There's teaching in cartooning, there's learning in cartooning, and so it's this wonderful combination of jobs. But it's also that, and I think I can speak for you on this too, is that as extroverted as I am, you can plop me down with kings and queens, politicians, actors, and I can hold my own. I'm a good conversationalist, but you give me the chance and I will switch back to introvert and probably cantankerous introvert in about 5 seconds, you know? So cartooning also appeals to that aspect of me, which we were just talking about, which is that no one can tell me what to do, and no one, and for that matter, I don't have to deal with humanity. And I know this makes me sound so cold, but there's a genuine part of me that loves sitting quietly in a studio by myself, doing what I want to do, drawing, and not necessarily having to listen to the mid-level VP manager of regional sales for the company tell me what to do, you know? So I love the isolation, not the isolation, that's not the right word. The sort of off on your own. That sounds more adventurous. Let's make it sound adventurous and American. I'm an individualist, Brad. I'm a rugged individualist, forging my own path in creativity and business, and that's the way I like to look.
I know I keep bringing up the same name, but he's literally the only person outside of like me and a couple family members that's been inside the studio. So when Scott came up and visited Philadelphia, he was all excited to come out and hang out at the studio, right? And so he's here and he's working, and he goes, just do what you'd normally do. And I go, listen, I can put some music on if you want. He says, I don't care, just do what you usually do. I go, okay. And I put my head down and I started working in silence. Because I don't talk when you see these people, they're doing the switches and they're patting their ass off when they're drunk. I can't do two things at once. I've tried to offer that as a Patreon reward. It doesn't work for me. I can't talk and draw at the same time. And
oh, sorry. I'm loving this idea of that as a Patreon word. Watch Brad talk.
Yes.
That's great.
Dave, there's a bunch of people that do it. You know, it's called like a live draw. You're supposed to go and they watch you draw and you talk while you're drawing and they ask questions and you answer questions. There's people who can pull this off. Scott's really good at it. I've seen him do it.
He does it very well.
I can't do that. And so I said, he goes, just do what you normally do. I put my head down. I started working. An hour and a half later, he gets my attention and he goes, this is it? I'm like, yeah, he goes, you don't listen to anything. You don't make a peep. And I'm like, no, I said, if you want to put music on, it's not going to bother me. And if you want to talk, I'll respond. But this is how I work. It's completely silent in here, you know? And I like it. So I like it that way. I like being a hermit. I'm much like you. I think there's like a term for that, like an introverted extrovert or an extroverted.
Yes, that's exactly what we are.
I can go out there. Now, my wife will have to twist my arm to get me to go out. In fact, I tell my friends, don't make plans with me. I'll always say we're busy. Make plans with my wife. She'll set it up, set the schedule, and she'll say, hey, Brad, we're going out to the Who's It's family on Saturday night at 7. I'll go, well, all right. I'll grumble all the way out there. When I walk in the door, I'm thrilled that I'm there. I'm so happy. We don't do this often enough. This is great. And then I get back to my studio and I shut the door and push it all out.
Right. Yes. No, you have exactly described both my career and my marriage, Brad. Good job. Yes. No, I'm the exact same way. And so cartooning has this wonderful ability to let you be a super performative public isolationist, you know, and there's not many things that allow you to do that. I mean, to be performative, you have to be the ultimate, not necessarily narcissist, but extroverted out there, putting yourself on the line, you know, directly in front of crowds or in cameras. And cartooning has all of that in terms of what it gets you, gives your brain. But you could do it in the quiet studio, sitting in a chair, no one telling you to do anything, and it's delightful. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
There's a second part of this. Now let's go back even further. What brought you first to the table? I mean, going way back, what was your first?
So the first thing
where you knew that this was something that was special.
So third grade, I found them, by the way, recently. Third grade, I had 8.5 by 11 spiral notebooks, the kind that a third grader would take notes in about, history or literature. And I made 4 panel cartoons on each page. And I have found them, and they're not good. But I remember I have the strongest memory of showing them to friends and the response. It was a drug. The showing it to a friend and they'd laugh or they like the way I draw something. And I remember being alone in my room. This is months later, and flipping from the first page to like the 40th page, and I could see my drawing getting better. And emotionally, at that notebook, or the 3 notebooks from third grade, that's when the spark was lit, and I knew from that point on.
I want to see these
and
so
then
bad.
Where
can you
really
post them in Patreon?
Well, in the process of moving, I'll probably find them again, but right now I don't know where they are. So thank you, Brad. Thank you for reminding me about my move again. Thank you, Brad. I was feeling good about myself.
Up on the board to remind yourself.
Oh, you son of a bitch. You delightful son of a bitch. Way to put me in my place about the magnets. Oh, that's delightful. Oh God, I'm hurting inside. I'm laughing, but I'm hurting inside because it's the pain. Like the pain of we've all had a move where and this is the moment. This is the moment that kills you in a move. You think you're done. You think you have packed up everything, and you have to be out. Like whether it's the landlord or the escrow itself closes the next day. You've got to be out, and you're about to go to bed at 1 a.m. You've got all the last boxes by the front door, and then you happen to walk by that weird cabinet that you never use in the bathroom or the kitchen, and the one that's above the fridge, and you go, oh no, what's in? I didn't even look in there. And you open it up, and it's like the Shangri-La of crap that you never use, but that has to go into a box. And you're like, oh no, I have another 3 hours of packing. That's
you get into that cabinet, and there's a trap door behind it with even more stuff, and you end up, tunneling into this recesses of the house of all the shit that you forgot you had.
Exactly. You're digging in there, and suddenly you see Mr. Tumnus, and he invites you in to help Aslan fight the White Queen, and you're like, oh God, what have I done? Why did I go into this glass cabinet? I should have done. Oh God, it's the worst. And it's all the stuff that you haven't touched it in a year and a half, but by God, you got to move it out because there's
somebody else to get that shit.
So it's the rice cooker that your grandmother gave you 10 years ago, and it doesn't really work. And you're like, oh, yeah, it's just, it's the worst. Anyway, so that's the aspect of moving that I'm not looking forward to.
Let's go from that to fast forwarding, cartooning past 40. What is it that has kept you being a cartoonist past 40? That's it, because there is a difference. Me cartooning at 20 is not the same as me cartooning at 40. What am I? I'm 44. I'm so old. Don't say that. I'm 48.
My beloved joke when I'm around my in-laws is I go, oh God, because I just had my birthday. I go, oh God, 44. There's no human being older than 44. This is the oldest a human being could be. 44 is the oldest. All my bones are breaking. And my 68, 70-year-old father-in-law's like, you can see him going, you son of a bitch. So what is keeping me going at 40? Okay, not to sound overtly joy-filled, but I really feel like I'm living my best life being a cartoonist. I feel like it taps into all my skill sets for all the reasons that we had talked about. And I feel like, that quote that Miyazaki said where he goes, someone asked him at I think he's 81, 83 now, but someone asked him a couple years ago, they're like, hey, how are you feeling about yourself as an artist? And he said at 81, he goes, I think I'm finally starting to figure it out.
I get that.
And I've started to have that feeling in the last few years that okay, I get this. Maybe I'm okay at this. And that's such a counteracting mood from, or countermanding move from my 20s, where I was like, God, will I ever be good at this? I want to be good at this. I just got to keep working at this. So something about my 40s, there's also, as much as the work itself is joy-filled, and this is the work that I want to be doing, and I am living my best life, there's also the satisfaction of having gotten better. Yes. So I feel satisfaction in the way that, like, I look at a guitarist who is a couple decades into it, and you see just the virtuoso fingers dancing, like they're not even looking at what they're doing anymore, and they're playing their mood. They're not physically playing the guitar; they're playing their mood. They're so good at it now that their body just reacts to what they want to do. And in part, I'm starting to feel that way with cartooning. Is that I no longer, for the most part, say, oh, I wish my pen could translate what I see in my brain. I for the most part, can get what I want to do. Granted, now you asked me to draw a horse, and I'll be throwing my shoe at you. But I guess what I'm just saying is it's so much better than me in my 20s and 30s. There's a joy in satisfaction of improvement.
I've got to ask you this.
But why are you? Why are you?
Go into me.
Okay, go ahead.
The Miyazaki quote made me think of this. I took a real nice break over the holiday season, which is something that you were at the forefront of suggesting to web cartoonists. Take a break, especially at Christmas. Take a break. We're so pounded into this mindset of got to have a new comic up, and it's important to take a break. And I did. And I took a nice long break, and it felt great. And I've been drawing this week and last week. And do you ever feel like you've forgotten how to draw?
If I take a break, yeah. So when I came back from this break, I was like, oh, right, the pen moves this way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the most basic movement.
I'm like checking the settings on the Wacom tablet because I'm like, did somebody screw with my Wacom tablet? It's not working right. And it's like I needed to hear that because I've been feeling like I've forgotten how to draw this week. Yeah, and actually that's where my Patreon backers, man, he doesn't even know that he did it, but there was this one guy, and I was struggling with this expression, and he just, like my phone beeps at me that somebody left a comment on the Evil Ink Patreon page, and he said, right, "Oh, I got to tell you, the way you draw eyes, it really is amazing. You really got this down." And that's exactly where I was trying to struggle, where I was struggling. And it was just that reminder that, okay, listen, I can do this. I have done this. You're overreacting. You haven't forgotten. You didn't have a stroke in the night. You don't smell burning toast. And man, I'm telling you, if you're a reader or a comic artist alike, do not miss the opportunity for a couple of kind words to somebody, because it literally got me over the hump last night. Just that one nice little compliment, It totally switched from a bad mental place to a more confident mental place. And I finished the drawing, and it looks perfectly good.
That's delightful. Yeah, no, it's funny how a tiny kindness like that. And you know what? I was actually thinking while you were speaking, I want to amend the way I was saying this, because I don't want the sense of satisfaction to sound egotistical. It's not like I think I've perfected what I want to do. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. Is that, and I think the metaphor is this. You know how in your 20s you're very worried about how you look physically, because you just want to find somebody that smooches you, and so you're like, oh, I hope I'm looking all right. I got to get to the gym, and by the time you're in your 40s, that anxiety and that fear has abated somewhat, and you just feel a sense of calm. And like one of the things I remember talking to my grandfather in his 70s or 80s was that he was just saying that you in your old age you realize what's important, and you realize all the dumb things that you worried about. And I think part of my satisfaction as a cartoonist in my 40s is that I don't worry as much about the dumb things anymore. Like, what will my peers think about the way I draw this? What will my peers think about this joke? Right. What will the audience judge me for about the way I cartoon? Right. And it's a version of like, oh, I hope somebody likes the way it looks so they smooch me. It's you in your 20s, you want desperately to be loved and to be singled out and to told you're special. And at 40, you're just much more comfortable with yourself as who you are, and it's more of a not a take it or leave it, but just more the confidence of saying, you know what, I'm not for everybody as a cartoonist, but I'm for somebody, and in the meantime I'm certainly enjoying it. And so I guess rather than saying satisfaction at the level of my work, because I always want to improve, the satisfaction comes from just a calmness about who I am and judging who I am.
Confidence, right? It does come from confidence.
Yeah, a confidence that Right. If you do something enough, if you're iterative about an activity enough, you just know you'll get there. So like if I don't have an idea at this moment, I know with a little time and a little bit of juice in the pumps that I can get an idea for within an hour or two, for a comic. And so with that comes a calm and a satisfaction that maybe I didn't have in my 20s. So there's also that as a cartoonist. It's a level of not beating myself up that I used to have, that I'm really enjoying as an artist.
I think just yesterday said that he had a dream in which I chastised him for not starting a webcomic, and he hasn't had the confidence to do it in 20 years, and I was kind of chewing him out, and I got on Twitter and I said, well, I was right. And I said, you do need to do this. You do need to stop waiting. And if it's confidence, I agree. Confidence is very, very crucial to a cartoonist. And once you learn how to fake that, you're set. And it's a throwaway line, but I believe it entirely, because in those early Greystone Inns, I was very much faking confidence. Right. If I look back, it's like, nah, you were not on solid ground there. You were learning as you go, as was expected. That's exactly where I, of course, was going to be as a 20-year-old cartoonist. But now I'm not faking confidence quite as much, now. And it shows in your work. Confidence is really important. And if you don't have it, you got to fake it for a little bit,
Yeah. And also, I will say this I want to address specifically that person, that man or woman that emailed you about saying, I wish I had done this 20 years ago. My dear friend, who you know well, Fred Schroeder, who is the co-director on Stripped, is a brilliant cinematographer, brilliant director of photography, knows his way around shots and lightings and cameras and techniques, and is just swims in the art of film. He's very good.
Yeah, he's great.
And, after we got done with Stripped, he said, I'm finding myself a little tired of cartooning. Or filmmaking. I'm going to take up my cartooning again. And he set a goal for himself to do at least a drawing a day. And he had to publicly post it. I remember that was part of it for himself.
And I've seen him posting his stuff.
Yeah. And I have to say, as a friend, he's similar to our age, but to the point of it's never too late to start. He is getting better and better and better as he goes. And I see it getting better. And I'm really proud of him. And I hope that your reader can take that to heart, that it's not too late to start.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Especially now in your older years, in your 20s, you feel like, oh, it's going to take me 3 years to get better. I'll be 23. That's so old. But in your 40s, you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, that 3 years of work, of steady work, it'll go by in a blink, and you'll look back and be like, oh yeah, I'm better at being an artist now, and so it's worth starting.
And the thing that Fred did that was absolutely right was he posted it on social media, not because of, SEO or social media, juice or anything like that, but because that becomes a thing. That becomes it keeps you true. It keeps you doing it. You've got a reason to do it. You've got a goal. When I started, my New Year's resolution last year was to walk 30 minutes a day. And the way I got myself to do it was I took a picture while I walked and posted it on Facebook and Twitter and made kind of a comment about it.
And that's what that was. Yes. Okay. I remember that.
Yeah. And that was a really dumb thing, but it became like, oh, I got to go out there and walk because I got to post my picture. And in so doing, I learned things about the neighborhood that I wouldn't have known. Right up the street, Raisinets were invented by Blumenthal Brothers Chocolate Company, and they're a stone's throw from here. And, I drove past it every day, never took the time to look up what it was. And here it's the birthplace of Raisinets and Goobers, Dave.
Right.
Goobers.
Right. Oh, my goodness. Goobers. That's what a hallmark of Americana that is. If for those of you listening in Australia, Brad Guigar has just shared what most Americans would consider to be our finest achievement. Forget about jazz. Forget about apple pie. Forget about the comic strip. What most Americans consider our greatest achievement is the goober. I think. But what you did in that photo, and what Fred did with his social media with his drawing, is that it's that classic technique of when you're trying to establish a new what's the word I'm looking for? A new policy of life, a new habit. Come on, help me out. A new habit. Thank you. Good God. Listen to old man McGibbons over here.
Lord.
When you're trying to establish
tackle the highlights for kids crossword.
Oh God! Oh, that's so perfectly nailed it. Oh God! Oh my God!
Once you get past 2 down, Goofus and Galliant, you're done.
Oh my God! Why is the highlights joke killing me? Oh God!
I don't know, but that's the best laugh I got out of you all day.
Oh my God! Goofus and Gallant, the worst drawn. Oh my good God! Oh,
wasn't it great in its horribleness?
Oh, it was so great. By the way, Highlights Magazine is still coming to our house, and it's not much better. It's really
no, it doesn't.
God bless the good people. God bless the good people at Highlights Magazine, but it's not like they're churning out Shakespeare. Anyway, so sorry. There's someone out there right now. There's a cartoonist at his desk that works for Highlights Magazine who literally just dropped his pencil. Is like, that asshole, that son of a bitch. This is my life's work. What was I going to say? Oh, so anyway, the way to before I had a stroke, the way to reinforce a new habit is you had a classic idea of you have a triggering event, you have the action itself, and then you have a reward too. Because and so what's nice about putting it on social media is that I remember even I would comment about, wow, look at that building in Philly, or hey, watch out for that guy in the sweatshirt. He looks like he's going to stab you, because it was Philly. So you had a nice story. I can never not take a shot at Philly. I love it. But that reward is also part of it, which is that for the people that draw for themselves, there is something to be said for posting it publicly, even if you feel you're not ready, because there is a slowly gaining and increasing satisfaction, a reward mechanism that triggers the habit when you're posting it publicly. So kudos to you and to Fred and to anyone else who's starting a new habit and shares it publicly.
And they say that if you can keep a habit for 6 weeks, then you're good to go. If you can do it once you get past that 6-week mark, you've established a new habit.
And as my waistline can show you, I can't get past that 6-week mark. So that's week 5. I'm both hands are reaching in the Ben & Jerry's aisle at the local freezer, and I'm scooping out the fish food.
Oh, man. Well, now see, my answer to why I do this in my 40s is completely different than yours.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's when I was listening to you talk, it's like, oh man, he's got a completely different mindset than I do. Mine. I'm gonna laugh if yours is I have a mortgage. Well, you know what? You're not that far off. So I quit my. So here's the double whammy that is my life. I spent from 1991 until 2012 working as a newspaper graphic artist. Okay. Which is completely useless resume at this point, right? I mean, you can say, oh, well, he's got a big informational graphics, and I do. I can churn out an infographic like nobody's business, and like page design. Like maybe a magazine design type application, absolutely. But there's not a whole lot of informational graphics. Kind of had a nice little bump thanks to social media recently. So that would be a maybe. But when you look at my resume, it's not very useful. You know, there's not a whole lot of people looking for newspaper graphic artists. And that is the things I did for the last 20 years they all fall under that heading. Then in 2012, I quit my day job. And for the last 5 years, holy shit, it's been 5 years. For the last 5 years, I've been a full-time cartoonist. I've got to make this work at this point because I got nothing else going on, man. I do not have a resume that I can shop around.
I like how, as a counterpoint to my earlier comment that I know you, Brad, and you could do 7 different jobs well. Your counterpoint is, oh no, I got this and it's my only train.
No, I know that I could do that too. That's my problem. Sometimes I have too much confidence. I think I could sit down and write a damn good sitcom, or I think I could be a good essayist. I think I could do a lot of things.
I know you can. I know for a fact you could.
But in terms of doing a resume and getting somebody else to believe that, it would be nigh on to impossible. I'd literally have to go into another line of work that, very much like webcomics, I built independently from the ground up and made that happen. And, at 48 years old, I have absolutely no intention of doing that unless I absolutely have to. The closest I came was voiceover work, was voice acting. And I started putting out feelers about that around 2012, when I was like, okay, I might need a couple more income streams to really kind of even this out. And the more I talked to people, the more I found out that voiceover work is just like webcomics. You start the exact same way, and it was going to be a 5 to 10 year arc before I built that to where it needed to be. And it was just a simple case of, there's no way I'm going to have the time to do that. I'd better make comics work.
Yeah. Well, you're raising a super interesting point, which is, hooray, you've become a success in cartooning. You've got the career you've always wanted. Hooray, hooray, hooray. But then 10 years go on, and with the march of time, do we become increasingly less marketable to the wider world? And the answer might be yes. Yeah, you might be right.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I tell at comic conventions. Younger people come up all the time. They're like, oh, man, it's so cool that you're a full-time cartoonist. I'm like, listen. Number one, and we this is something we could talk about for an entire podcast. You are not a failure if you're a cartoonist or any kind of creative person and you have a day job.
Oh, God, no.
Get that out of your head right now. And you know what? That was the biggest detriment. That mindset did more damage to me over time than anything else. I was obsessed with being a full-time cartoonist. It was the goal. I was not going to be a cartoonist with a capital C until I quit that freaking day job. And unlike any other goal that you set in life, what happened was, once I achieved that goal, it wasn't the finish line. It was the starter's pistol. I was working 17-hour days so I could quit my day job. And when I quit my day job, I found myself working 18 hours because I didn't want to go back to the day job.
Yeah, you're not right.
Like I told somebody just this past weekend, I said, yeah, it's great being your own boss, but the problem is I work for an asshole. Makes me work nights, makes me work weekends. This guy's a real jerk.
Yeah, family trips. He's off writing on the side. Yeah, you're not wrong. That's amazing. Yeah. It's interesting though, because again, I still wouldn't trade it for the world. I love it.
Well, but that's part of the illness that we share. I don't know whether it's a gambler's mentality or whether it's the heart of being a creative person. Or maybe a little bit of both, but I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Right, and I haven't thought this through, so I'm going to start this thought, and you can tell me where I'm wrong.
Okay,
but it's almost like there is pleasure in the pain of cartooning for us.
Yeah,
and maybe that's one of the hallmarks of someone that really wants to be a cartoonist, is that there's pleasure even in the pain of what we do.
Whoa, that's a great way of putting it.
When you find the holistic nature of cartooning, from the having to work nights and weekends, or writing on a family vacation and you're off to the side doing something, or the brain never turning off, or constantly having to be thinking about your next income stream, but we love that fires us up. And maybe that's part of it, is that my wife teaches every once in a while at the university level. She's a TV writer, and every once in a while she teaches at a university level like you do. And I love her for this line. She'll look out at her class and she'll say, all right, I want you to think right now in your mind, and you tell yourself, are you going to make it as a TV writer or not? And she said, because right now there's one person in this room that says, come hell or high water, I am going to be a TV writer. And the odds are that person is going to do it. But if you're like on the fence, you're not going to be the one to make it. Because I think it's a version of taking pleasure in the pain, is that person who's like, I'm doing it hell or high water, they're going to work the nights and weekends and the 60-hour weeks to get to be a TV writer. And it might take them 10 years, but they're going to get there. The unfortunate flip side of that, though, too, is that there's also the painfully deluded person who's like, no, I'm going to do it. I've got the skill set, Brad.
That comes for me. I'm glad you're saying that, because I didn't want to contradict your wife. But the danger there is that you run into Dunning-Kruger syndrome, where you literally don't have enough experience or intelligence in the thing to know how bad you are at doing the thing. And, right. And I'm sorry, we both, I'm sure, during I know that I've met people like this. I'll bet you have too, where it's like, oh man, you got to give this up. This is not ever going to work for you. And those are the people that dig in just as hard as that star pupil in your wife's class.
Yeah. And the truth is, I don't know what to say to that person. And I'm saying that haltingly because I genuinely don't know. When they show me their work and they hold it up like a gentle puppy that needs to be caressed at a Comic-Con, like, what do you think? But they do it year after year after year, and I don't see improvement. And a part of it is, maybe it's not my place to tell them to give it up, because that's their journey to make. Like, if they, in the same way that someone, I don't know what the answer there is, but part of it is developing the skill set to be a self-editor. And it's one of the hardest things to do, where you can critique your own work as though you were a 30-person art class with a professor sitting in front of you telling you what's wrong with your work. You have to develop that eye. And for me, maybe it came easier than this person at Comic-Con who's showing me for the 6th year in a row the same poorly drawn comic strip. But maybe it's going to take them 10 years and then suddenly it'll click. I don't know. But that is the heartbreaking aspect to someone who believes. You're right. It's a Dunning-Kruger thing. They believe without base that they have what it takes to get to where they want to be. You know,
and they're convinced. The conspiracy theories that come up, and they're convinced that there's all these other reasons that they're not succeeding, and it has nothing to do with them.
Right. Well, Brad, it happened for you because you started online in 1999, or Dave, it happened for you because you had a couple key links from the right people, or Brad, it happened for you. And you're like, oh God, calm it down here, buddy.
You know what I tell those people? You're goddamn right. It happened to me because I started in 1998. Now finish the sentence. I started in 1998 and I worked every fucking day since.
Oh, geez. Oh, boy. We got the kitty cat claws on Brad on that one.
That one I don't even mess around with, because they throw every now and again, that one gets thrown at me. Well, you came in at the perfect time, blah, blah. No. You finish the sentence. I came in and I worked every day since.
Well, also, the other way to finish that sentence is, yes, I got online at 1998 and I quit my day job in 2012. You know, like that's a significant 14 years of working without immediate and full payback. Yeah. So
there's so many. I've got to go back and keep show notes because there's so many tangents. I want to spend an entire hour just talking Dunning-Kruger.
Brad, I just want to get a glass of scotch and cuddle up with you by a fire and talk about comics all day long. Brad, this is great.
But listen, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to say one other thing, which is that I think one of the versions of the expression that my wife was trying to express, which is that it's that old Henry Ford saying, and oh boy, does Henry Ford have a lot of problematic thoughts in his head. But
as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh God, what is he going to say? It's like Henry Ford said.
Yeah, American racism. It still exists. No, Henry Ford, also a terrible human being, but he had this great pithy quote that whether you think you can or you can't, you are right. And I was like, oh, that's a great summary of basically the attitude you have to cultivate towards making your career work. But then Henry Ford also said a bunch of terrible things that I'm not going to repeat. And Henry Ford, problematic person in history. Let's put it that way. So anyway, we are coming up on the end of the hour. Yeah. We have a billion topics from this show for next week. But I want to say this. I want to thank, and this is genuine, I want to thank the however many people have already joined us on Patreon.
Dude, it's over 55.
Yeah, exactly. And we've only had one show in the can. And here's why I want to thank the people backing us on Patreon. We really want to make this where we can pay an editor to clean up this audio, make it sound great. And frankly, Brad and I could care less about making income from Comic Lab. But if it's self-sustaining...
Speak for yourself. No, I'm just kidding. Go back to being genuine. I couldn't resist doing that. I'm sorry. Go back. I'll cut that out. I'll do the editing.
No, you don't have that. That's amazing. No, so wait a minute. I'm buying a house, so we're very interested in making some money on Comic Lab.
That. Get some more wall space.
That's right. No, but the idea that it could be self-sustaining is delightful because so much of asking, I do not want to ask an editor to do this for free, and I'm not savvy enough or good enough at audio engineering to make this sound as good as it could. So I want to thank you guys for joining us at patreon.com/comiclab because that support is going to make this show awesome, and it is already making the show. We've already started interviewing editors because we think we're on the right path. So it's great.
Yeah, and the Discord chat, like I said, has already taken off like wildfire. So get out there, patreon.com/comiclab. You've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been Brad Guigar, the editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
The Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your generous support on patreon.com/comiclab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/comiclab.